Hi everyone, this tutorial for Pixel Crusher's dialog system for Unity will show you how to edit dialog databases in the dialog editor window. To create a dialog database, right-click in the project view and select Create Dialog System Dialog Database. Then double-click it to edit it. The dialog editor window's Database tab lets you define data about the database itself, such as the author, version, and a description field that you can use to describe the content of this database. The Emphasis Settings foldout lets you define the appearance of 4 emphasis settings that you can use in your dialog text. The Merge Database foldout lets you merge the content of another database into this one. The Export Database foldout lets you export the content of this database to various text-based formats, such as ChatMapper XML and CSV format that you can import into spreadsheet programs like Google Sheets and Microsoft Excel. And the Editor Settings foldout lets you set some behavior about the dialog editor itself. The Actors tab is where you define your actors. Every dialog database starts with one actor for the player. We'll create a new one. Select Menu, New Actor. This actor will be an NPC named Kara, who's the wife of the player and the captain of the starship that they command. And we'll set some portrait images, which is optional. You only need to set these if your dialog UI uses portrait images. I'm adding some additional portrait images here. These are alternate images that can be used with the pic tag in your dialog text. And let's create another actor named Flibbit, who is the adoptive alien toddler of the player and Kara. Notice that Kara and Flibbit's isPlayer field is set to false. That means they're NPCs. For Flibbit, let's change the custom node color to aqua to distinguish it in the dialog editor from other characters. The Quests and Items tab lets you define quests and items. To create a quest, select Menu, New Quest. Let's call this quest Mining. The idea behind this quest is that the player needs to find the coordinates to a trilithium asteroid to mine it to keep their mining business afloat. By default, UIs will use the quest name, but if you want to use a separate display name, you can add that here. Tick Use Groups if you want to group your quests visually in the quest log window into different categories. Trackable if you want it to be able to appear in the quest tracker HUD. Abandonable if it's abandonable in the quest log UI. And before we go to entries, we'll add a description. And a success description. The success description appears when the quest is done successfully. Now we'll want to break this quest down into two subtasks called entries. The first is to find the coordinates of where the asteroid is, and the second is to actually mine the asteroid. So we'll tick Has Entries and click Add New Quest Entry to add an entry. We'll call this one Find the Coordinates. And then we'll add another one, entry number 2, and we'll call this one Mine the Asteroid. And that's our quest. Let's go to the Locations tab. Locations aren't used for anything in particular in the dialog system. They're really just a blank space for you to define your own data if you find it useful. Let's create a location named Space Station. All content in the dialog database has fields. Some of these fields are built in, and you can also add your own by clicking the plus here or on the Templates tab, which we'll go over later. And let's create another location, menu, new location for the asteroid. The menu items also have various sorting options. So we can sort these by name to make them easier to find. The Variables tab lets you define runtime variables that you can use to keep track of various states in your game. We'll create a new variable by selecting Menu, New Variable, and call it HasCoords. The type will be Boolean or true-false, defaulting to false, and this variable represents whether the player has found the coordinates or not. And let's create another variable called night, also Boolean, and this one is true at nighttime. These variables would need to be set during gameplay somehow, and that's up to you in your game. Now we're finally getting to the meat of the dialog editor, which is the Conversations canvas. On the Conversations canvas, click the plus button to create a new conversation. By default, it's given new conversation and a number, in this case 1. Let's change this one to Kara, because this is a conversation that occurs between the player and Kara. We'll create a child node where Kara asks, have you found the coordinates? And we're going to put a condition on this so that Kara will only say this line if the quest is active and if the first entry is also active. The ... button is a Lua wizard that automatically generates the underlying Lua code, but you're also welcome to enter custom Lua code there too if you want. Then we'll add 2 player responses. And I'll right-click and select Auto Arrange to arrange them more nicely on the canvas. The first one will be the player's response if the player has not found the coordinates. Menu text is shown in the response menu. And dialog text is shown after the player has selected a menu item, and then it shows the player subtitle if player subtitles are enabled in your dialog manager. This one will only show in the menu if the player does not have the coordinates yet. So we'll set the condition to variable has coords is false. And the next one will be yes. And this one will only be shown if the variable is true. And we'll also progress the quest by setting the quest entry number 1 to success and quest entry number 2 now to active. And we'll add a response from Kara. We'll also use the pick tag to show picture number 2, which is the happy expression. Now let's add another conversation for Flibbit. This one will be a bark conversation. So let's call it Flibbit Barks. By the way, while we're on the conversation properties, it is possible to override display settings for a specific conversation to use different settings from what's defined in the dialog manager. Now for this conversation, the conversant is Flibbit. So select that here. And we're going to add 3 bark nodes. Auto-arrange them and set their text. Now Flibbit gets hungry at night, but only at night. So we're going to set a condition on this third one that the variable night must be true. And those are our 2 conversations. One other thing to mention about conversations is that if you want to put them into submenus, you can use forward slashes in your titles. The Templates tab lets you customize 2 areas. At the bottom are the colors of lines that are used in outline mode for conversations. To get to outline mode, select Menu, Outline Mode. This presents a more compact version of each conversation. While we're here, there are also options to show the actor name, show actor portraits, and if you have held down the middle mouse button or Alt-dragged to move the canvas, you can select home position or center on start to home the canvas or center it on the Start node. The other purpose of the Templates tab is to define field templates for each of the data types. For instance, if we want to add an age field to actors, open up the Actors foldout, click plus, and enter a new field name. Age, we'll set it to be a number type. And if you want this to show in the main section for each actor, tick the main checkbox. The menu item lets you apply that template to your existing assets which we'll do now, and also gives you options to export and import your template configuration so that you can save it off for later use. If we go back to the actor, we'll see now that age is shown on the main section for the actor. And that's it for the dialog editor. Thank you for watching.